Ladies and gents, good evening. I'm always going to take advantage of a natural silence. It's the teacher in me. Lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for coming, and it's great to see so many people here this evening. We're going to be talking about the IB. Now, there's a number of you in the room who may not have met me before, so it's obviously the right thing to do is introduce myself. My name is Lee Glazer. I'm the headmaster of this wonderful school, Taunton School, that we're very, very proud of. And we want to give you as much information as we possibly can about the International Baccalaureate. And that is something that's important. It's important that this doesn't come across as some kind of hard sell. This is about education and making sure that the courses that we offer are the right courses for the right students. So it's important that what we do this evening is make sure that you have as much information as you need to go away and make the right decisions, or even go away and come back and ask more questions. That's the most important part of the evening, that you go away feeling fully informed about IB. I went to a conference recently, and I'm using the quote that I've heard a number of times, and it's quite an old quote now, but it's even more apparent these days that what we're doing as educators is preparing students to do jobs that don't yet exist, using technology that hasn't been invented to solve problems that we don't know are problems yet. Which, when you think about that and you try and think about the certainty about how we educate our students, that's pretty difficult, particularly when you think about the further developments in technology and the various things that are going on in the world. And if 70 is indeed the age of retirement, then the people in the room here are probably going to be working till around about 2075, which is quite scary. But if further developments keep continuing in medical care and prolonging life and quality of life, we could be working, you could be working, I'll be long gone, I think. You could be working into the 22nd century. That's a thought that is quite sobering. But the things that are certain, we're talking about the uncertainty, about the problems and the jobs and the technology that I've talked about. In my mind, there are two certainties. One is we will be working with people from many, many different cultures from around the world, and we will all be working very closely together. The other is technology. We will all be working with technology, and I've already said it, and it's not a cliche, we'll be working with technologies that probably haven't even been thought of, never mind invented. And if you think about the progress over the last 20 years in terms of technology, I think I'm just about getting, that was an apt moment, wasn't it? I think I'm just about right with my dates, that if you go back 20 years, we wouldn't have mobile phones in our pockets. We probably wouldn't be using the internet too much. And these things over the last 20 years, well, if you take yourself forwards 20 years and imagine the changes that have happened over the last 20 years and think about what might happen over the next 20 years, well, take yourselves forward to 2075, as I've just said. Who knows? Who knows what's going to be going on? So those two areas, working with people from different cultures and working with people from around the world and working with these different technologies, is the absolute certainty in my mind that we're going to have to be combating and making sure that we educate our students to work within. That's going to be the world of the future. So where does the IB fit into all of this? Well, that's what this evening's all about. The IB is a qualification, it's an ethos, it's a way of working that we are very much bought into. It's an outstanding course. It's something that really does prepare our students for the next step and beyond, and for the world that they will live in and the world that they will be part of and that they will form as things move forward. And it's absolutely vital that we challenge those questions, because if we think about the world we live in and we think about the recent history and the recent past, there are so many ethical things that we need to be talking about. There's so many things in terms of how we solve many of the world's current problems and future problems that actually we haven't thought about yet. And that's where the IB is challenging us and making sure that we think in those terms. So what I'm going to do, having introduced some of the background to why we're talking about IB and what we're here to talk about this evening, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Blumel. I often talk about Mr. Blumel when people visit the school and want to ask about IB, and he'll hate me for saying this, but I'm going to say it, because if there's anything worth knowing about the IB, he knows it. And that sets him up very nicely for me to get out of the way and him to spout his knowledge and let you know exactly what the IB is all about. So welcome again. I'll hand over to Mr. Blumel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glazer. Okay, yes. I hope this evening will be useful in all sorts of ways. We've tried to put together a series of short items rather than one long item. And that really begins with me giving a very bare bones nuts and bolts of the IB. I will say that there are some leaflets on the chairs you will have either sat on or noticed before you sat down. Mrs. Rosser over here has actually got a whole handful more of those same leaflets. So if you feel that the person next to you has just taken that leaflet, we've got a load more for you to pick up on the way out. That actually contains much of what I'm about to say, so don't feel you've got to take in all this information in one go. We've also got a couple of other bits of paper where we're trying to just help you think about IB maybe compared to A-levels and something to take away as well. But anyway, on with the bare bones now. Fingers crossed. What I want to do is give a very brief outline of what we're talking about, and then you'll see in more detail the people who actually do it. Okay. Firstly, the IB is different, perhaps, from other qualifications because it's holistic. The IB was put together as a package. It's not a collection of separate subjects. Right at its foundation, the idea is to connect everything together and give you something that's not just chemistry or history or French, but is something that contains all those, but provides something integrated that helps you see the difference between chemistry and French and English maybe, but also give you transferable skills. It's something you're going to hear several times this evening, that the IB is very much looking to university, but it's looking beyond university as well, for the rest of the life, and a long life it sounds like it's going to be. Secondly, one thing to understand about the IB is it was where it came from. It was actually set up nearly 40 years ago now by a very idealistic group of people who were educationalists who believed that they wanted to start with a blank sheet of paper. What would make a really good education? Let's just sort of start from scratch. And what they came up with was roughly what you've got today. So, in a sense, rather than perhaps coming from a series of universities setting entrance exams, which is largely where A-levels come from, this has come from a group of people saying, what makes a good education? And it is unashamedly idealistic. There are some people almost have said to me, this sounds like a bit of a cult to me, because we're trying to change the world here. And okay, at the end of the day, you're still going to lessons in chemistry and biology and so on, but the IB has produced a learner profile, which is something that maybe we won't have time to look at this evening. I've got it on a slide near the end if anybody's interested, to really define the type of student that will really succeed both on the IB but also in their life in future. And out of that learner profile comes the sort of qualities that we're looking for and the courses are aimed to develop. And it's all about, I think you saw a poster out there, quote, education for a better world. Maybe if some of you will one day be in jobs and positions in global organisations, and maybe some of the things we're seeing on the news that are going wrong could go a little better when you guys have actually had this education. Gosh, that's a big ask, but that's what it's about. Next, okay, it's a worldwide qualification. I suppose that almost goes without saying, that when the IB was set up, it was set up particularly looking at students who are very globally minded. Maybe parents are travelling around the world anyway as a result of their job. Therefore, it's recognised right across the world. Okay, local qualifications are still recognised abroad. Okay, but the IB has almost that automatic stamp of approval. It's authorised in pretty well every country. Occasionally you get a few legal niceties to have to overcome. But if you're someone who is looking beyond not just Taunton, not just beyond the UK, but looking to the rest of the world, then maybe this is something to think about. Down to the nitty-gritty, and apologies for those of you who already know this, okay, the basics are you will choose 6 subjects. You will also there will be a core, which consists of 3 components essentially. Something called the theory of knowledge, a course in thinking a little more critically about what you're learning and what you're believing and why you're believing it and what you're basing it on. You'll write an extended essay and go into depth, and that's something where maybe you can answer the criticism that it's quite broad, but here you can actually go into depth. And also Creativity Action Service, often called CAS in the IB world. This is where that other side of who you are, that's aside from your studies, is developed. And it's looking at particularly at those skills employers are looking for. service, action, it's interpersonal. And there's no exam for that, but you do write a reflection, and you talk to actually reflect on what you've learnt and how you develop as a person. And any of you who've perhaps been involved in the Duke of Edinburgh's award, we do this here at Taunton School, it's not dissimilar, because actually the people who set up the IB were the same people talking to the Duke of Edinburgh and when they set up the award. So if you see something similar, there's a reason for it. Finally, on my bare bones, how's it all graded? What do I get at the end of the diploma? Well, roughly goes like this. We're on numbers rather than letters. So, we're well ahead of Mr. Gove and his new 9-point GCSE scale. The IB has a 7-point scale. Think of 7 as the A star of the qualification. So if you're going to be a real top student in French, you're aiming for 7 points, okay? And it goes down to 6 points, think of it as the A, 5 points, think of it as the B, and so on. It roughly works like that, okay? Those of you who are good at your maths will realise that 6 times 7 is 42, so you can get a maximum 42 points from your 6 subjects, and the last 3 points, as it says here, come from that core and from the theory of knowledge component and the extended essay by a quite complicated formula I won't bore you with now. Other key things to know about the diploma: you get your score out of 45. Have I passed? And the answer will be, firstly, have I got more than 24 points? And that's what you're aiming for. The diploma does have a pass-fail built into it. And, we should say, don't take on the diploma course unless you think you're pretty surely going to get above 24, because there is a line and it's always good to be above it. Now, it's not an utter disaster if you go below it. You do get UCAS points for individual subjects, and we have had a few students who, for whatever reason, it hasn't quite worked out, not many fortunately, but they've still actually gone on to higher education. So even below the line, it's still valuable, but it's much better to get above the line. When I said those 6 subjects, this was just to remind you, you'll often see this sort of circular diagram here, which actually it's not as good as their previous one, which was a hexagon, which was outside there. But basically, the breadth component here is, you'll see the main groups: literature, languages, humanities, science, mathematics, and the arts. And the only other thing I really need to add is that, just to flag up, the arts are optional, and that means that that's your music or your theatre or your visual arts. That allows the IB student to maybe specialise a little bit with 2 sciences rather than just the one. So you're choosing your 6 subjects from the other 5, okay, or maybe a 3rd language, or maybe 2 humanities, a very popular choice for many of our students. So you're doing economics and history, and it provides a very strong basis in which to apply for university, okay? But the core's in the centre, as we mentioned, and you'll see the 6 subjects around the outside. And that logo, again, it's much clearer to see on the handout you've got. So now I will say no more. At this point, as I said, we've got this rather nice video, which will go on our website. We'll see what the students say, and a little more from me.
I wanted to do IB from a very early age because there was offered such a variety of subjects, you didn't have to narrow it down.
The IB appeals to the all-rounder, it appeals to the student who's academically strong in all their subjects. But actually, we've discovered that the IB is not just for the all-rounder and not just for the academically very able. The IB allows a specialist to still play to their strengths, to maybe take 2 sciences, mathematics, whilst keeping the language and the ability to write going.
I've always known that I wanted to study medicine at university. I'm currently doing chemistry, biology, maths. I knew that I would still be able to apply for medicine doing IB, and I thought if I had the opportunity to study humanity, a language and English as well, I thought I might as well, because you're not going to lose out.
I'm taking IB high-level psychology, economics, biology and English, then standard maths and ab initio Spanish.
IB is a programme of study with a coherent educational philosophy at its core.
IB entails taking 6 subjects.
Of those 6 subjects, 3 are taken at higher level and 3 at standard level.
Within them, you'll take usually 1 language, English, mathematics, some humanities, and then a science.
The sixth subject, there's a bit more freedom, and this allows the IB student to specialise maybe in additional humanity or an additional science to lean their diploma towards their area of strength and maybe where they're heading at university.
You also do CAS, which stands for Creativity, Action and Service.
This is where the IB really helps students to tackle those extra personal skills that are going to make the difference maybe one day in the workplace.
For my creativity, I'm doing Young Enterprise and MUN.
For my action, I play football for the first team.
For my service, I taught my friend the piano. We study theory of knowledge in IB, or TOK.
The theory of knowledge is about learning how you know what you do know.
It's similar to critical thinking in that you get an appreciation of how knowledge originates and how it's applied in everyday life.
I find it a very interesting subject because it's unlike any other subject. There's no right or wrong answer.
More and more the IB is emphasising the importance of becoming reflective, and this is a skill that increasingly universities are looking for as well. Finally, the extended essay is where an IB student can really show knowledge and understanding in depth and independence. It allows the student who's otherwise doing quite a broad curriculum to specialise in a given area, that they can show excellence. And we found year on year, students taking extended essays have used those in university interviews, and they've been very well received.
What I really like about the IB is it's not just facts. In your textbooks you always have a little bit of context, a little bit of history, so you get a much more rounded view.
The IB, it's a lot of work, but you've got your teachers there to help you, and because the classes are so small, you know everyone so well.
The IB's grown in popularity. Last year we had our largest cohort, with nearly 40 students completing the IB diploma. Every year we've been exceeding the world average by several points, and this has given us a real boost and given us a confidence that any student taking IB here at Taunton School will do well, and they will go on to do well. Okay, well there you are. Apologies, I think I'm repeating myself a little bit there. What I'd like to do now is to maybe fast forward the next stage and introduce Mr. Carl Gombrich here, who is, Carl is actually Programme Director, somewhere if I can just click this forward, it's on here, Programme Director for the Arts and Sciences course at UCL, that's University College London. Now for anybody who doesn't know, University College London is in that elite group of universities. Every year the Times and various other organisations publish a thorough survey of universities around the whole world. Every year, the last I don't know how many years, UCL has been in the top 20. It's up there with Harvard, it's up there with a couple of other universities that you may not have heard of in the UK. There's one other university in London that's in that top league, that's Imperial College by the way. But University College is somewhere that, as I said, has created a fantastic reputation for itself, and we're really pleased to have Carl here today. What I'm going to do is hand over to Carl just for a few minutes, because in a way he can do something we can't, which is look, he sees IB students, but not whether as you see them sitting here. But what happens next, Carl? Over to you.
Thank you, Headmaster and Martin, for inviting me. I'm certainly not from the IB. I want to make that clear, so I'm not here to sell the IB. The IB is certainly not for everybody, but it is a very, very good thing, and it's a very good thing for some students in particular, and it's a very good thing in general in many ways, which I hope to tell you about. Martin's given me 10 minutes to kind of busk, really, on the themes of the IB in relation to what I do at UCL, what the program's about, global education, the future of jobs, and so on. And because the IB is a very stimulating qualification, I'm kind of stimulated at the moment, actually. So Martin will keep me to track, I think, if I slightly go off on one, but I've got about 10 minutes to try and tell you why universities in general like the IB, and why I personally think it's a great qualification for university entrance and for the future. The headmaster mentioned things which are just absolute fact, and yet I still think not properly absorbed by students and their parents. When you go to a job interview for a global bank or for the civil service, or you want to set up your tech company and you want to work with people from Korea or Germany. Studying just one thing at university is not really going to help you. It may not be a drawback, and that's why I have to be a bit careful the way I unsell the IB. You can study French literature and in this country go on and do whatever you like. But it's not really going to optimize your opportunities when you get that job and you have to work with someone from Korea. You have to learn a computing language because your boss says you do. You have to organize a team to sell your new product in a new market. Those are the kinds of jobs that you will be doing. And it is, and Martin said I could be a bit punchy about this, it's kind of weird in this country that we're stuck in a mindset that says you do 3 things from 16 to 18 and 1 thing afterwards at university. There's no really positive rationale to do that. And I think on the global stage, the UK is about the only country in the world that requires you to do just 3 things from 16 to 18 in the A-level. I don't want to knock the A-level because my kids might be doing that and we have lots of wonderful students. But it is kind of odd. And I think we need to acknowledge that and say, why is it? Why is it that we, and I heard today actually perhaps Botswana are the only countries in the world that think this is a good thing, and everybody else thinks we should be doing broader education for our young people. So it is an excellent idea when you're 16 to 18 and perhaps even longer to keep that breadth, keep some science in your locker. Headmaster mentioned about tech. All of your lives will be touched by tech. Also, all of your lives will be touched by things like discussions about climate change or health. Those are scientific issues. You can't miss that out of your education. Equally, you can't miss out non-scientific things about your education, because no scientist, no engineer today can operate without understanding economics, business, policy, all the things that allow them to get their jobs done. So we need to think about educating a chunk of people, a much bigger chunk than we've already got, along the lines of the IB and what I'm going to tell you about in a moment. So this is the course I run at UCL. It's been an incredible journey, a wonderful journey. I've been in charge for 5 years now, 2 years in the setup, 3 years in the launch and running. And in this country, it's still pretty unique. It's academically extremely rigorous and demanding, but when you look across the world, particularly to America, it's not that unique. And if you went to Harvard or Yale or Berkeley, some other places, you would get an education a bit like this. And it's basically the idea that when you're 18, you should keep more in your locker than going down one very narrow path which might not give you everything you need for your future. So we require students to study a mix of humanities and sciences right throughout the program, and we require them to bring it together in some way by the end of the program. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what I do. Martin thought that would be appropriate because we are this, we're a big shiny Rolls Royce of the university. So when we do something, it has a reason and a rationale, and it's generally thought to be something which other people might look at doing. This is a very important statistic for you to think about. When you go for those graduate job interviews and assessment centres in the media, the civil servant, financial sector, management consultancy, NGO work, no one is going to say, what particular subject did you do at university and why haven't you got this subject instead of that subject? You can find innumerable quotes from all the world banking leaders that they would like fewer economists and more, say, historians or other sorts of people. You can find innumerable law companies now that say we want multidisciplinary graduates, people who know more than just about the law. And in fact, 60 to 70% of all the jobs you go for won't ask about your subject-specific degree, because the correspondence between traditional academic disciplines, subjects that is, which were by and large created in the 19th century in this country, and the world of work today, the internet connections, the massive change which the World Wide Web is doing to us, is not that great. There's not that much of a connection between doing history or biology at university and going on to be a management consultant for PwC or working in a global bank. And they know that. They're not idiots, these people. They're driven by cost, right? They want to get this right. They want the best possible graduates. And so they're making sure they try to get graduates with breadth and ability to learn new things quickly when on the job. So that's very important because it's kind of a baseline about what you should do at university. The idea that you have to do a traditional subject to get a white-collar job is just blown away at the moment. And a lot of my job is speaking to global leaders on this kind of thing. So I was in Japan last November speaking to the chairman of the Mitsui Banking Corporation. The pleasure of a great conversation yesterday with one of Hong Kong's richest men. And they all say this. They all say we want graduates with breadth, depth, foreign language. That's the sort of graduates we want to do. And I would like to think that everyone in this room has that kind of ambition to be a global player. I've got nothing against you if you want to stay very, very local and you'll live your life locally, that's okay. But the reality is if you want to go to a top university and join that type of work, that is the type of person you will need to be. So these are the kinds of things they talk about. And they are kind of woolly, they're kind of buzzy, and they're kind of not things that traditional moms and dads, I didn't study this at school. The head of Deloitte, I was in Shanghai in May, the head of Deloitte said, well, he said something so wacky, I'm not even going to ask you to guess it. I told the students this morning. He said the number one thing he looks for in a graduate recruit is the ability to form relationships and sustain those relationships. I saw a gentleman nodding, fantastic. In another forum, I might have asked you to build on that, sir. But yeah, how do you teach that? What teachers told to tell their students to form relationships and sustain them? That's the kind of thing we're told not to do these days, right? But this is the sorts of talk, because the world of business is changing so quickly. This is the sort of talk that global leaders of business are saying they want in their employees. And we have to think about this as educators, sort of thing that Master mentioned before. We have to think about how we educate this alongside all the great traditions that we have and all the great subject knowledge which we've built. Otherwise, we're not really being true to the futures of our young people, and we're not actually respectfully engaging with business either. I meet some educators who poo-poo this sort of talk, because they think it doesn't really mean anything, it's not in the textbook. And I say, well, if the head of Deloitte is saying that, the chairman of Mitsui Banking Corporation is saying that, who are we as teachers to tell them that that's a load of rubbish? They know their business, these guys. They're top players. So we need to think about how we educate for these kinds of things. And a broader curriculum, a more connected curriculum, a curriculum which obliges you to take different perspectives on knowledge and make connections between them, that is going to help in that kind of discussion, that kind of dialogue, that kind of graduate recruitment, perhaps more than other sorts of education. So interdisciplinarity is a big part of the IB. It basically means combining subjects together in interesting ways. And if you think of any what we call complex real-world problems in business, transport, health, politics, human-computer interaction, they all involve some science and some non-science. Human-computer action, how do you interrelate with your machine? It's got something to do with the technology, something to do with your psychology, something to do with graphics, something to do with sociology, social movements. They're all partly scientific and partly non-scientific. And certainly on my program, just to talk about that for a moment, that's one of our USPs. We insist that all our students take this combination in some meaningful way, and they will drive it to their own particular conclusion in the end. So we have one girl who did a dissertation on neuroscience and poetry, what neuroscience can tell us about our appreciation of the arts and what it can't. It was serious neuroscience, and it was serious literature. So they get their own particular concentrations, but each one of our students has a certain amount of science in their portfolio and a certain amount of non-science. And to bring this back to the IB, of course, that's baked into the curriculum that you have to do. And our graduates, as I've been hinting, really go on to an extraordinary range of graduate jobs in every sector. In banking, consultancy, NGOs, United Nations, creative industries. We've got some very great successes in law. If you're thinking about law, people straight onto legal training contracts without doing the graduate conversion. All these areas, because this is the modern world of work. It's connected, it's multidisciplinary, it's broad, and that's the kind of education you need to get into that world. And we have many students going on to many master's courses in a very, very broad range as well. So there is something kind of interesting and almost, it's amazing how flexible you can be. Again, I think I used this for you this morning, so apologies, some of you have probably heard this before. But it's particularly the British labour market, also somewhat the US, but this is now percolating throughout the world. The flexibility in combining your own things, making something meaningful out of them, and taking that on to the next stage of education, whether it's in the master's or research area or in graduate jobs, is much, much more than people appreciate. We've seen that again and again and again on this degree. People doing things we didn't think were possible in education 5 years ago. One of my students got the top mark in UCL in organic chemistry, alongside all the chemists, 100+ students. One of my students who also did Arabic and management accounting. She got the top mark in chemistry. That's not supposed to be possible because you're supposed to have to just do chemistry for 3 years to get those kinds of marks. Another of my students wrote a law report in her second year. Not really, she's doing a bit of law, but she's doing other things. In her final year, she's doing an engineering project, building what's called an anaerobic digester to take waste food and turn it into energy for a dormitory in UCL. It's amazing what is possible, and a lot of it is due to this thing here, right? All the information you need is really on here, up to postgraduate level. And if you're a motivated learner, someone who enjoys learning, is committed to learning, you can do an awful lot more than you could even 10, 15 years ago. And we're seeing that now. So this kind of program, which offers this breadth, the possibility for students to make their own connections, is viable now, perhaps in a way it wasn't even 15 years ago. Now, I'm slightly caught between sort of selling my course and going on about it and talking about the IB. But just to bring it back finally to the IB, it's that kind of mentality, I think. I think it's for motivated learners. I think that's fair to say, isn't it? It's for people who really like learning. If you don't like learning, good luck with your future. Because you're all going to have to learn a heck of a lot more quickly and different sort of things than probably I did in my generation. But I think you particularly have to enjoy learning for the IB. It is challenging to wear these different hats. To say, okay, I'm really going to get into my biology today and tomorrow it's going to be French. That is challenging. We see that challenge on this program. But it's precisely the challenge, I think, that makes you a bit more special. You come out greater than the sum of the parts because you put in that little bit of extra work. So I've done my bit on IB, and I wanted to tell you about my program. Many of the students have heard about this before. It is a great qualification. Other qualifications are also excellent, I should say, as we're being recorded. And most of my students are still A-level students. That's really, really important to say. Most of my students are still A-level students because that is the norm in this country. But the IB really, really does suit talented, motivated all-rounders. And it's just a good thing. I mean, I hope I've made it clear why it's a good thing for many reasons. The IB is just a good thing. Okay, I'll move on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Carl. We'll have an opportunity in a few minutes' time for questions. So if you do feel you want to come back to Carl on anything he said, then please do ask him a question in a few minutes' time. We'll give you a chance to say that. But what we want to do now is just to, how about a different perspective from the university to you as parents. And as you as parents, probably like me, I did A-levels. That's when I was at school a long time ago. And I was, in a way, very fortunate. I was introduced to the IB back in many years ago, 1987. I've been involved with the IB since then, but that's quite a long time ago. But for many of you, maybe the IB is a very new qualification, and particularly you're thinking, do I let my son, do I let my daughter do this qualification? Is it really okay? What's it like? Well, we've got a parent here, Karina. We'd like to, this is Karina That's right, Karina Travers, yes. And Liam is somewhere. Where's Liam? There he is. He's hiding at the back. You saw him on the video. He's done his hair now, so he's looking quite smart. And so we just thought we'd like to give Karina a brief few moments just to say, what's it like to be an IB parent?
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here because I was on the other side of this not that long ago, really, as a parent thinking, what am I... how I'm going to help my son to decide where he's going to go at sixth form, because as parents we always want to give our children the best and the most information that we can to guide them as best as we can so that they not only develop academically but also as well-rounded citizens. And I think the IB for a lot of us has been a little bit of a scary thing because it appears to be a new thing, which it really isn't, but it's not as prominent in this country as it might be in other countries. Now, I was brought up in Germany, I don't know if you knew that, but at the end of my grammar school time in Germany, what you do is you do the Abitur, which is the certificate that you need to get into university. And the Abitur is, that's your only option. There's no other options, that's what you do. But the Abitur is very much comparable to the International Baccalaureate in that it gives you a range of subjects from different blocks to study. And to study at higher level in some cases and at standard level at others. So for me, to come across the IB in this country actually was brilliant because I remember from my own days, and I'm going back quite a long time now, but you know, at the age of 16, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think if I'd had the choice at the time to narrow my options down, I probably would have done that, because as a student, you know, forgive me if I'm wrong, but you go for the easy option, because actually, as my son initially said, why do 6 subjects when I can do 3, Mum? You know, it doesn't make any sense. And it's when you begin to unpick actually the benefits that you get from those 6 subjects, I think you get the bigger picture. And I just couldn't quite understand in this country, and I think you've alluded in this, that you said you go from 3 subjects at A level to 1 subject at university. I'd go back, you go from sort of 13 up to 13 subjects at GCSE, and then you narrow them down to 3, and you kind of think that doesn't make any sense, because our students, our children, are at that level where they now can actually cope with making those links in their learning, and to be enthused about that, and to continue with that. So it did make much sense to me. And the IB, I think, although you said it's not for everyone, and I agree, there's some children who might find 6 subjects actually quite hard, because it is jolly hard, and you have to be committed, and you have to have the right attitude. But it's useful, I think, for those students who know exactly what they want to do, because they can choose from within those subjects their course content to know, actually, I need to take those subjects to get to where I want to be. But it's also really useful for those students who don't know what they want to do, who are all-rounders. And at the age of 16, a lot of people just don't know. And to keep your options open is really, really valuable. As a parent on top of that, I think what I found wonderful about the IB, and I think has helped my son to develop into a more holistic, sort of community-spirited person, to bring out even the better side, on top of the wonderful side, obviously, he's got already, is those 3 things, like the community service. Actually, we are living in a world where we're not isolated anymore, and we need to take care of each other. You know, it sounds a bit socialist, but I think it's important to do that, and to see your place within your community, and then extend that into the global world. Also, so that's the community action, the extended essay, like you said before, to show actually it's not just the breadth, and working on how the subjects fit together and give you that overview, but also actually show I can research something, and I can go really deep here, and I can show that I can do that. And on top of that, the theory of knowledge as well, which adds another dimension. As a parent, I thought that was brilliant. Going back again, sorry if I repeat what's been said before, but I'm kind of validating a little bit, you know, that school talk. But from a parent's perspective, I look back to my parents, and they started doing one job, and they continued that job for 35, 40 years, stayed where they've always lived, and that was it. And we've gone a long way from that. We are a global society now, and we have to, like you said, Mr. Glazer earlier on, equip our children for jobs that we don't even know what they are going to be. And I think the IB does that because it pulls information together and knowledge together. It creates children, I believe, that have an inquiring mind, that want to know more, that make links. And even just the course itself, I think, at this school in particular, you do come across a lot of international students, so you begin to sort of network and get to know other cultures really, really quickly. I think that's wonderful, because in Devon, we're quite isolated in lots of ways. So from that point of view, I think it does offer that extra dimension. My daughter, who has just gone through sixth form and is at university now, she opted for the A-levels instead of IB, simply because she couldn't quite face having exams at the end of 2 years and putting all her eggs in one basket. Now, that's not a consideration for you anymore, because actually A-levels have changed and it's all very much the same now. But she's now started going at a university, and she's doing history, but she's chosen a language because she's actually said, I'm missing that. I wasn't able to do a language really because I wanted to focus on where I was going at the time, but I wish I had. And I know with my son, he's doing a language, and he's doing a broad range of subjects that will help him, I hope, succeed wherever he goes. So, yeah, I don't envy you having to make a decision. As parents, we always feel, oh, is this the right thing? But from my point of view, the IB has been fantastic for my son. The school has been amazing. The quality of teaching is, exceptional. And I mean, he's only come into Taunton School for the sixth form. He came from a state school, and he's just loving it, and he's really developing into quite a wonderful young person. So, thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Something going very pink at the back there. Right, now, yeah, of course, the it's the students who really matter here. Now, we've had, some of you I hope have been able to have a chat with some of our students already, over drinks here, but well, I did think it would be helpful just maybe if I've sort of primed 4 of them to just come up to the front and add to what you saw in the video, to just so you can hear from the people who really know what it's like to do IB. So perhaps if it's Sahil and Daffy and Pascal and Libby, if you'd just like to come and grab a seat. I will ask you perhaps when you're speaking to stand up. As I've been sitting there, I realise that people at the back can't actually see. I'm going to grab a little microphone which might, so if anybody's having trouble hearing, I can stick this in front of them and hopefully you'll hear better. And really what I want to do here is just sort of chuck a few random questions. Now I will say they haven't a clue what I'm going to ask them. This has not been pre-prepared at all. And so I'm going to land, I'll start at the far end. Sahil, would you like to stand up? Okay, I'll give the microphone. Sahil, if you like, Sahil is in the upper sixth. Okay, so he really knows what it's like. He's now, 3/4 pretty well of the way through his IB course. Would you like to tell us what subjects you're doing for IB, and maybe then where are you looking, because you're in the midst of applying to university at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm taking economics, biology and chemistry at a high level, and for standard level I'm taking maths and English literature, and I'm taking ab initio Spanish. For those of you who don't know, that's starting language from the beginning. And I'm applying to university in the States. And that's one of the big reasons I chose IB, is because A-levels, I mean, my dad did A-levels and my whole family's done A-levels, so everyone knows what it's like. But the IB, I think, just is a lot stronger in terms of applying, because it just gives you that breadth, as they said earlier.
That's great, thank you very much. Okay, if you'd like to pass the microphone to Daffy next. This is Daffy, who's also in the upper sixth. Okay, so Daffy, sort of same question really. What are you studying for your IB, and where are you hoping to go with it?
I'm doing high-level economics, English, and design and technology, and for the standard level I do philosophy, Spanish, and maths. I'm one of the examples which I've never been in the top sets in 0, 10, and 11, and you don't have to be in top sets to do IB, which is quite important because some people think, oh, it's actually really hard out. Some people, you have to be a top set and everything, and need to be really need to be good at something. But there's options, because if you're not really good at maths, there's maths studies, maths standard, and obviously high level maths. You can choose all of that. There's sections which you can choose as well. That's why it heads as a standard level and higher level. But I'm aiming to do, I'm applying to Queen Mary Royal Holloway, which only wants, well not only wants, sorry, 34 points, 33, 32, and I'm applying with business management.
That's fantastic, Daffy. Thank you very much. And the point Daffy's made, I think it's a really important one here, that, whilst, Carl at UCL are in a very privileged position in that Premier League of being able to say, well, it's 38 points, am I right? Okay, which is right up there, with Oxford and universities like that, because, that's the way the university system works. The IB isn't just for your 38 to 40 point person who is probably going to go to UCL or Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard. There is actually a really good range of opportunities within the IB which will take you on to a full range of universities, and as Daffy has said, that offers the world average on IB is 30 points. I referred to it in the video earlier on, and anything above 30 you're in the top half of the IB. So Daffy may say, well, I'm not a top set student, but actually if she's getting 32 points she's still above the world average. So fantastic, well done, thank you. Let's go over to Libby next. Libby, so I'd like to stand up. Now Libby's in the lower sixth, so Libby's not quite there yet, maybe application to university wise. So Libby, tell us, I chose Libby. I said to her earlier, I chose Libby because Libby's our local girl. She's, maybe you've got some international connections I don't know about, but some people choose the IB because there's already that international link. Okay, but so Libby, why did you choose IB? What's the?
Well, I've got no idea what I want to do at university or what job I want to go into. So doing IB gave me the option to keep all my opportunities open. So I didn't have to do A-levels in maths or physics or science and stuff. I could keep all my options open by doing IB.
Right. And can I ask you two questions? One, which go together sort of. What are you finding really enjoying most about IB? And second question, what are you finding most challenging about doing IB?
I really like the international aspect because the variety of people in your classes is just amazing. You have people from all over the world and they have different perspectives and everything. It's really interesting. I think it's hard because I don't have a lot of free time, so it's hard to get the work because you have, at the moment, probably about the same amount of work as A-levels, but you just have less time to do it, so you've got to be organised. I mean, it is possible, but you just have to be organised and on top of things.
Great, thank you, Libby. That's really a very good point. That, you know, this one of the things that you need to consider carefully as you're making perhaps that decision about IB is that organisation and that management of your time. And I think there are two schools of thought here. If you're good at this, like Libby is, then IBs will be a good option because you will already be good at managing your time. But there's another type of IB student we've seen who isn't very good at the start, but boy, are they good at the end. Because the IB, it's sink or swim, and the only way to swim is to learn to sort your life out. That is why, when the IB students go to university, they are so prized, because they arrive at university, and we've had several speakers down from university over the last few years, and one of them just said, every time I get an IB student, they don't sit there waiting to be told what to do. They're off doing it. And I think that's very much characteristic of the IB student. Talking of which, here's Pascal. Okay, right, Pascal. Again, what subjects are you doing? Again, Pascal's in the lower sixth, so if you could just introduce yourself and again, why did you do IB?
Okay, I'm Pascal, and I do high-level biology, chemistry, and history. And as my standard levels, I do, the normal English, maths, and French. So at the start of the year, I was really debating whether or not I should do IB or A-level. And before I got my GCSE results, I was pretty much 90% sure I would do A-level. But having had a sister who's done IB, she left 2 years ago and got 38 points, I thought, if she can do it, I can do it. A bit of sibling rivalry there, but yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, let's just sort of now think about one or two of those. What are you doing for CAS? What's we heard a bit about CAS, but what's...
So as you know, CAS is creativity, action, and service, yeah. So as my creativity, I do bridge, which I think is quite unique to me, because not a lot of people do bridge. As my activity, I stay here playing football about 3 times a week. For example, I had a match today, that counts. And for my service, I go volunteering down in Taunton at the YMCA Centre, helping disabled children with football.
Great. And tell us about, there's this reflections. What's that all about?
Well, I haven't really...
You're just getting into this, I should say, so I'd rather put him on the spot here.
Reflection. Well, it's in the name, really. You reflect on what you've done. And I think reflection is one of the hardest parts of CAS. It's easy enough writing about what you've done in a day and writing about, I went to help disabled children, but it's a different thing saying what you got from it, and I think that's what reflection helps you do.
Great, that's a very good answer actually. So well done there. Yeah, it's what have I got from it, and how is this affecting me? And it's the way this is done actually is it's almost done like an online sort of blog type thing. You may see some people do this online naturally anyway, and again it's evaluating your own strengths and weaknesses, and this again comes back to the employability aspect. It's those sort of skills that employers are looking for. So great, thank you, Pascal. I'll pass back to Libby, and I'm going to put Libby on the spot now and say, yeah, we haven't heard much about theory of knowledge, have we? Tell us about theory of knowledge. Just anything you want to tell us about theory of knowledge, so far anyway.
Okay, so it's very interesting, theory of knowledge. It makes you question everything you read. So you don't just read something in a textbook and completely just agree with it and think it's true. You have to think where they got their information from, how do they know it's true. Because in theory of knowledge we look at things like ways of knowing things. So how do we know different facts and what those kind of facts go into the areas of knowledge. It's quite complicated, but it is very interesting, and I think it is really beneficial to the rest of your subjects because you can apply it to each subject differently.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, it's all, it's sort of beginning to discover that, you know, if you're doing the science because you're doing IB, but what are the, you know, do we trust what they tell us, what do the scientists tell us? Really? Always? Some of the time? You know, those are the sort of we're just doing the arts at the moment, actually. We're actually asking the question, what is art? And every IB student's doing this, not just those who are studying art. Great, thank you. If you'd like to pass back to Daffy. Right, now, one part of the IB that the lower six haven't got involved with, of course, is the extended essay. But Daffy's just handed in her final extended essay. So Daffy, tell us what you have written about for your extended essay.
I chose to do my extended essay in economics because I want to obviously continue doing business/economics in the future from my uni, and it helps also because you write 4,000 words about a topic you have to be interested in. It will help you a lot more. I chose to do it on, my title was to what extent does excise duties reduce consumption of cigarettes in Plovdiv, Bulgaria, which is where I'm from, which makes my essay very personal, and that's what uni is like. They want what you're interested in rather than, oh, my teacher told me to do that, so I'm just going to do that. Nah. Do what you're interested in. It helps you. They want to see what you are like rather than what your parents are telling you to write or what your teachers are willing to tell you to write.
Fantastic, thank you. If you'd just like to pass then over to Sahil, can I ask you the same question? Sahil.
So my extended essay was in biology, led by the very able Dr. Penny. And my father's a pharmacist, so I've always been interested in medicine and things like that, and this gave me the opportunity to kind of explore that. So I researched this chemical in garlic that's antibacterial and observed its effects on bacteria. And I think like it really helped me to engage in a topic I found interesting and kind of work in kind of university level equipment and like bacterial plates. Who works with bacterial plates, you know? So I think that was really interesting and, you know, kind of an opportunity that's really worth doing.
Right, thank you, fantastic. Well, you know, hopefully that's given you a little more insight to what's going on. I'm now going to say, look, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left before I want to, you know, I promised we would finish about 8. Maybe some of you have some questions, and this is a question maybe for some of our panel, or maybe a question for Carl, and maybe a question for Karina. Yes?
I was just wondering, is the IB accepted by all universities across the UK, across all subjects?
Is the IB accepted by all universities across the UK? Is that across the UK for all subjects was the question. I mean, you're probably just mainly from the UCL perspective. Obviously, you're very happy with it. Yeah. No, I'm going to just perhaps, I see Mr. Judd over here lurking in the corner. Mr. Judd, could I just ask you to come up to the front because there's a microphone here that might... because I think whilst I can have a go at the answer to that, he can actually know the answer to that question.
I know every course at every university.
Mr. Judd is our head of careers, by the way, for anyone who's...
If UCL can say, as far as I know, I think I can say it as well. We have never had a problem placing any student who's done the IB, is the answer. And we've placed them in a complete range of topics, from medicine through business management, economics, through to philosophy, through to biology, chemistry, geology. So you can go down the humanities. We still generally specialise, although some of our students are now moving more towards the liberal arts as more liberal arts courses become available at university. There's 24 in the country at the moment. So we've never had a problem with it. I'm not aware of any particular university that has a big issue with the IB. It is recognised, UCAS, it's fully sorted out, and it's incredibly transferable around the world. It's the easiest qualification to go for a walk from one continent to another one.
Thank you. Yeah, sure, yeah, please do.
As a parent, just having gone through all the university applications with my son, if you wanted to order a prospectus from a university, it will always tell you what the point score is that they're expecting and which subject they're expecting it at higher level, because often you might need a higher level, for instance, if you're doing maths, a higher level in maths or economics or geography, what you want to do, it'll tell you what you need, which subjects or which combinations of subjects you need. So it's well worth, if you know what your child wants to do, to actually get some perspectives and just have a look at it.
Yeah, I recently went to a conference at UCAS, and actually they were showing some of the statistics, and what's quite interesting is that less than half of university applications are now with A-levels. Less than half. Now, that's quite interesting. That's across the whole of you. That's quite interesting. The big chunk that maybe is missing, we haven't mentioned, is BTEC. Now, actually, we're also offering BTEC, by the way, and maybe for some of you, it's not a question of IB or A-level, maybe it's a question of IB or BTEC. So if I can just drop that word in, because actually A-levels, but also universities are seeing the whole raft of European qualifications. The Abitur from Germany was mentioned earlier. So from a university perspective, IB is not unusual. It's just one of these other qualifications alongside A-levels who we have students doing. Great, thank you. And any more questions from the floor? Okay.
Where do you get the curriculum for the IB from, and does it change the same way as we've seen A-levels and the rest of the
Great, yes, thank you. Good question. Yes, the IB is in a sense its own exam board. Whereas with A-level, we have 4 exam boards actually. We're at the moment OCR, AQA. Some of you will recognise these names from GCSEs that you're studying at the moment, and so on. The IB is its own exam board, so it will write and set exams in a similar way to the A-level exam boards. Okay. One thing to think about with the IB is you don't have any choice of exam board. Well, you probably don't anyway. It's probably your teachers who've chosen to do AQA for this subject and OCR for that subject. Okay, but we have to go with what they provide. And usually what they provide is very good. Occasionally we're all, have our moments of criticism. That's a bit of a funny part of the syllabus, but that's no different from A-level. And in many ways, the exam system of IB is not that dissimilar from what you would have with A-levels. It's not perfect. Every year we have somebody comes back with a result we didn't expect, and we go and have to have it remarked, and that happens with GCSEs, it happens with A-levels, and despite the idealism of the IB, please don't come along expecting it to be wonderfully perfect for every moment, because after all it is an organisation with its own sort of fallibilities as well. But does that answer your question? In a sense, yeah, that curriculum is written by specialists at the IB in the same way that, as I said, an A-level syllabus would be written. The only thing perhaps to say is that unlike the UK qualifications, there's no government interfering, which is a great strength of the IB, that the curriculum is written by educationalists who are really trying their best to do what is best for the young people taking the qualification across the world. There's no government saying, yes, but you've got to include this, or we've got to be politically correct here, and you're not going to have that, okay? And that's been one of the, I think, why the IB has just steadily grown, because every country here and a country there, usually sooner or later the government tries to meddle. And it doesn't happen with the IB. Great, good. Anything else? Yes, one from the back.
What happens if you want to be a specialist, if you actually really do want to?
Right. Great question, yeah. I think there are 2 answers to that question. One answer is do A-levels, and I think that's still a good answer. We're not here to knock A-levels, but we're here to say, look, the IB is good too. Okay, the other answer is do IB, because you've got 3 higher level subjects that will probably get you into that specialist course at university. So, you can do maths, physics and chemistry as your 3 high levels. That's pretty specialist into the physical sciences area. What you'll also be doing, though, with the IB is you'll still be doing at standard level English, a language, and maybe something like psychology. Those 3 higher levels will get you into your specialist course at university. Those 3 standard level subjects, though, may well get you into the job beyond university, because if you go to university to study, I studied biochemistry, and I know talking to the people where I was, a good number go on and do research into biochemistry and a career in biochemistry, but a lot of people go on to the sort of jobs that Carl was describing in business, and that, of course, is suddenly where your extra...
Can I come
yeah,
back on that?
please come, yeah.
It's a very interesting question to me, because I think my generation or your generation don't really actually understand what specialism means anymore, because there are so many new specialisms, this comes back to the master's point, which didn't exist when we were kids. So some of my students are, I think, already specialists as undergraduates. For example, we have one student who does data visualizations of political conflict. Hello, I don't know what that is, but she is an international consultant in that at the age of 21. She goes around leading world projects on this because she's put together her own specialism, which is kind of a Generation Y? I can't remember. Yes, a Generation Y thing involving tech, coding, visualizations, with something about political conflict and NGO work. And we see this again and again and again. People, if they're motivated learners and they've actually got a broader base, they can actually, at a very young age, early 20s anyway, create their own specialism by combining something techie, sciencey with something non-techie sciencey. And they are the really, really interesting graduates. The girl I mentioned also who's doing engineering dissertation, anaerobic digestion, that didn't exist even 10 years ago. You know, to make some machine which takes waste and turns it back into energy for a building in some way, and she's looking at the economics of that, legal implications of that. So it's kind of, she will emerge from this degree as a highly specialized expert in the feasibility of anaerobic digestive systems. What an amazing thing. But it's not, you know, lawyer or doctor or, you know, it's important, I think, for our generation in a way to get with the program here. So we still talk about specialism as if it's those very traditional professions particularly. And there are just uncountable number of specialisms out there for young people who are able to find what they're interested in. I think one of the young people here said this. Just just do what you're interested in and bring together your own specialism. And that can read in any interview situation or in any postgraduate situation, any research situation. So specialism, like a lot of things in the world today, is kind of changing what we mean by it. Doesn't just mean one academic subject. That's the point I'd make.
Right, thank you. Is that okay? One question, yeah.
Is there any way of getting a feel for what a weekly timetable would look like?
What the weekly timetable? I think I'm going to pick on one of my students here. So, you know, okay, Libby, I'm picking on Libby, to just grab the microphone. Could you just give us an idea of your weekly timetable, roughly how it goes? Not perhaps every lesson, but...
So it does vary from whatever subjects you do. So if you do a high level science, you have 7 lessons a week, and if you do a high level something else, you have 6. So it just depends on your subjects partly. And some people do 4 high levels, so they can have an extra if they want to drop it, or they might need it for university application, so they will have fewer frees. I have 2 frees a week, which is not many, but I do a lot of music, so that takes out a few of them. But we don't have many frees, so we are mostly, so on Monday I have a free in the morning, and I have double English, double physics, theory of knowledge, and French. So yeah, you don't have a lot of frees, but we have busy days, but good.
Does that help? I think one thing to point out here is that one thing we've found quite successful at Taunton School, we slightly front load the course because it is quite full on, as Libby said. So she's actually doing more lessons now. As the time moves on into her 3rd and 4th term, she'll actually drop down slightly on lessons. And that allows the space in which then she'll be then writing her extended essay. Probably don't know what you're going to be doing yet, but it gives a little bit of more room to manoeuvre, and it works, so you sort of provide a few more gaps at that stage.
Is it worth mentioning taster days or not?
What, as in?
As in, I'm just thinking, you know, if you have a son or a daughter who might want to just see what it's like to be an IB student for a day, there are taster days. I know my son did it, and my younger son's just recently done it, where you come to school and you follow an IB student around and you attend their lessons. So that student, actually your son, your daughter, will get a really understanding of what's the intensity of the lessons, and you're being matched up then as well with similar subjects, so you can attend similar subjects during those days.
Right, thank you, that's really helpful.
I think the thing I'm concerned about is, I suppose, having a daughter who's, she has a broad range of interests. She likes to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think up until now, that's been quite challenging in terms of timetabling. So, you know, making choices is obviously key.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is really important to look at the whole picture. It isn't just the academic subject, it is the whole picture, and that's part of the choice. I mean, Libby just mentioned, actually, she's sort of, if you want to know where to find Libby, if she's not in a lesson, probably the music school will be the place to find her, because how many music groups are you in? So 5 music groups, okay. And so, you know, go and talk to Libby how it works if you're that committed outside of the classroom. It can work, but as she said earlier, your time management and your organisation's the key here to make it work. Great, okay. Anything else? I don't want to leave any questions unanswered, but I'm aware of the time, just moving on. Carl is out, he has a train to catch because it's the last one back to London, and so apologies for that, he's had to slip away. But what I'm going to suggest we do now is just to sort of bring the evening to a close, formally anyway. Our panel are here, so are some others. I have far too many volunteers, and I really have to be quite cruel and just pick 4 of them for the panel, but I've got some other IB students who are here as well. Please do collar them at the end and say, look, that's what you just said, or can you just tell me a bit more about this? Because they'd love to tell you all about the IB, and they've given up some of their precious free time to be here with you, so please do make use of them. I'm just going to, I think there's a slide at the end, I've done that. This was actually just something that I found a couple of years ago on actually the website of an American school, and I thought, well, it was quite good. Maybe it's just as a final word, really. They tried to sort of outline what makes a successful IB student, and I thought, well, actually, this is quite nice. Self-motivation, and this point's come out several times, and I thought that little bracketed bit was quite insightful, really. Just if you're thinking about, is this right for me? Okay. Here's the point we just said. Either possess or be willing to acquire. Okay. Something the IB is very strong on, understanding. They have a saying that if you... we don't agree with everyone, but we understand that maybe someone else who has a different view might just be right. And finally, as we've said, which of course ties in why IB and Taunton School go so well together, because the last point is actually something we encourage all our students to do, not just IB students. But again, it's part of the package here. So I think we're going to finish there. Thank you very much for being here this evening, and I hope it's ticked the boxes. As I said at the beginning, Mrs. Ross, could I just get you to stand up a moment? I know she'll hate me for this. She's got a bundle of those leaflets that were on the chair. So if you didn't manage to get one, please go and find Mrs. Rosser just before you go, and please come and find our students. And thank you very much. Have a nice evening.